most places in the world aren't being asked to, by some policy, make experience a priority. So I think there's a fundamental shift in sort of the ether or the fibers or the DNA of healthcare in general that we've realized we have to do a better job, and we have to be intentional about it in caring for the people who are seeking our care every day. And we need to care for the people who show up to deliver on that care.
New choices, new players, new models of care. You know, consumer first healthcare is everywhere. For us to build the future, to see what's new, we gotta look at the world from a different point of view. Consumer innovation ain't going away. I say it's here to stay. Today it leads the way. We gotta drop the silos. We're all the same team. Experience, business, tech, and marketing. So join us now. Join the revolution. Consumer first health is the evolution. Status quo or like status no. Yeah, this is the healthcare rap. Yo, come on, let's go.
Welcome back to the leading podcast about consumer-centered healthcare. This is episode 361. I'm Jared Johnson, and here's what's going to go down today. We have the Flava of the week about 4 major health systems forming Longitude Health. Is it like a rock supergroup, a Power 5 conference, or neither? And what can we deduce from the limited information that we have available so far? I'll talk about that. Then I welcome Jason Wolf, founder of the Beryl Institute. And when I say he's a luminary in this field, you know I mean it. Some of the things I enjoyed the most are what Jason had to say about the current and future state of the patient experience and the aspects of consumer experience that have been instrumental in pushing the industry forward. This conversation's been a long time coming, so it's time to dive right in. Are you ready? Let's go.
Flava of the week.
What can we expect from the latest healthcare supergroup? On October 8th, 4 leading health systems formed Longitude Health, a groundbreaking initiative to address healthcare's most complex challenges and opportunities. According to a press release, Baylor Scott & White Health, Memorial Hermann Health System, Novant Health, and Providence announced the formation of the new organization that aims to revolutionize the way that health systems operate and deliver impactful change for patients and communities across the country. The founding health system members will collectively invest in initiatives over the next 5 years across the U.S. In the short term, Longitude Health intends to make multiple strategic investments focused on key areas that can create impact over the first 12 to 24 months of the organization's formation. In addition, the organization will seek other like-minded and high-performing health system members to join the organization over time. We don't have a lot of details yet, but they do list 3 strategic goals on their website. First, transform business models. Identify, develop, and implement innovative solutions to health systems' most complex challenges and opportunities. Second, improve health system performance. Successfully confronting these challenges and opportunities enhances performance along the dimensions of cost, quality, access, and patient experience. And third, empower healthier futures. Retain more of the equity value derived from developing new capabilities to achieve sustainable change and invest back into patients and communities. Now, in typical human fashion, when we encounter something new, we tend to try to categorize it and draw analogies to things we already know. In that sense, is this like a rock supergroup, a Power 4 conference, or maybe the next Ryzant Health? The combination of leading players gives it the sense of a supergroup, which could be interesting because everyone knows that the best 2 of all time, Temple of the Dog and Audioslave, gave us some of the best rock albums of the 90s and early 2000s. But I digress. In addition to that, the geography-spanning nature of the players here gives it the feel of one of the revamped Power 4 conferences in college athletics that used to be geographically confined, but now span coast to coast. That's also one of the reasons why we're getting Ryzant Health vibes here. If we really think about it, we all know nothing like this happens unless the players see it as a road to more revenue. So it will be interesting to see what this roadmap looks like. Could they be looking to create a super GPO for even greater cost savings, or maybe an operational version of value-based care with non-clinical quality measures and reimbursement models? We don't quite know yet, but here's what I hope it is. I hope it's a vehicle to accelerate the transformation of the underlying business models and alignment of incentives that drive everything in this business. We need a culminating event to incentivize consumer transformation at scale. After all, digital transformation never would have scaled to where it is today without a pot of hundreds of billions of dollars. I say it's time to get that ball rolling again. Let's watch and see if Longitude Health's vision includes true transformation by making consumer-centered care more profitable and scalable. That's another way that we'll build the healthcare of tomorrow, and that's the Flava of the week.
The flow.
All right, everyone, let's get into the flow. Please join me for just a super exciting episode today. Please give it up for Jason Wolf. So many of you know him. Jason's the president and CEO of the Beryl Institute. He is a champion of the patient experience. And since June, we can say he's the author of Transforming the Future of Healthcare. So we're going to dive into that. Now, Jason won't tell us about himself, but I consider him one of the luminaries in the industry who's worked not just to prove one aspect here or there, but to bring the industry along with him. And as a result, we're going to talk today about the current and future state of the patient experience. And we're going to dig into some of the aspects of the consumer experience that I feel like are very related, overlap, and they even empower a lot of the work about some of the things that Jason's been instrumental in moving forward in the industry. So with all that, Jason, this conversation has been a long time coming. Welcome to the Healthcare Wrap.
Indeed. Thanks, Jerry. I really appreciate that. And the fact that you use the word luminary only lets me know that somehow my mom got involved in giving you my bio. I don't know exactly.
That's it. You're on to me. Nothing gets by you. Why don't you give us like a 2-minute version of who you are, what you're all about, and then we'll dig into the book here in a moment. But love to hear just for those who aren't familiar.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've always been driven by a personal passion that you can profoundly transform the world by unleashing the potential in people's hearts. When I came from outside healthcare around both a diplomacy and foreign service lens and an org change and culture lens, and found that where else could diplomacy and culture change be more impactful than in healthcare? And so after a kind of a winding journey, found my way into healthcare on the delivery side. And in that journey, realized we had to do a better job of coming together as a healthcare ecosystem to actually improve healthcare experience for both those who show up every day to get care and those who show up every day to deliver it. And led to the start of the Beryl Institute. Hard to believe it'll be 15 years ago next year since we started this journey from an idea to what we have been able to build today, and have really worked, I think, together with an incredible community of people around the world to try to transform the human experience and really the conversation around what the healthcare experience can be for, like I said, the people who show up, the people who work every day, and the communities in which healthcare operates each day in every corner of our globe. And so I still don't know how globes have corners, but it tends to be the phrase, right?
See, nothing gets by you. Like I said,
yeah.
The fact that we're even having conversations about what's the difference between patient experience and consumer experience, what parts apply to a patient, what parts apply to them before or after you're a patient, and what does that work really mean and who it involves. And more importantly, the fact that you can look back for nearly 15 years and look at some tangible movement that's happened in the industry as a result of the work you're doing. That's real. That is real progress. And I love even just looking back a few years ago and seeing how the conversation has evolved. I feel like there's this spotlight that has shined on patient experience and hasn't stopped. It's just grown. And I think one big part of that is the Beryl Institute itself. Tell us a little bit more about the Institute and just some of the work you've done. 15 years, that's incredible.
It makes me feel a little old, I'll be honest. But, and I would say it's a work of passion. And we really simply describe ourselves as a global community of people working to make the healthcare experience better in the simplest of terms. And by that, we really are bringing together the voices of people who deliver care every day and focus on experience improvement. We include the voices of patients, family members, care partners. We include the members in the resource provider and innovator community, all as equal partners, in really ensuring that we're having a conversation around developing the right practices, understanding the best opportunities to drive outcomes, and really elevate the conversation and transform it around the world. I think the one thing that I'm really proud of is at the Institute, we've really created a unique space. There's not really anything exactly like us in the world. We're a safe space for sharing ideas, learning opportunities, innovative research. We're not a vendor. We don't have a model we espouse necessarily. We have core concepts we believe in that are essential to ensuring that the human experience is delivered in a way that's meaningful, compassionate, and transformative. And we think that when people engage with us, you get better outcomes, you get better performance for your organizations. We ultimately hope we're creating a more human-centered healthcare system as a result of this incredible tapestry of people around the world that have come together. Now 60,000 plus strong, 85 countries that are members. We've content from the Institute is actually accessed in 220 countries and territories, according to Google Analytics. So somewhere, everywhere in the world, someone's focusing on this. It means to me it's important and we're focusing on the right things. And so we've been really proud of and humbled by the impact we've been able to have as a community.
It's truly remarkable. I do see very quickly and easily the reason for that growth is the desire to improve healthcare at its base and in some very specific ways. I'm wondering if that was part of the backstory for the book. So you just published this book in June. I just mentioned at the beginning, it's called Transforming the Future of Healthcare. Can you give us the backstory? What led up to this and why now?
Yeah, it's interesting. And maybe it felt like it was the right time coming into our 15th year. This book in particular the subtitle is Reflections on a Decade of the Experience Movement. And this idea that we look back to move forward is an important aspect, I think. We don't live backwards, we move forward, right? But we look back to learn what we can. And I think even the things you were alluding to and the transformative pathway that healthcare has been on, influenced by traversing the pandemic, influenced by the evolution of things we didn't even really engage in 15 years ago. The real explosion in social media and the way that people talk, the way people communicate, the expectations that have been set in healthcare. I think the extreme tsunami of consumerism that has really changed the way we should think about healthcare. I don't think consumer and healthcare is a dirty word. I think the reality is it's changing the nature of things. And so this book was really a moment in time. I was sitting there looking, and we have within the Institute family of things we do, we have a journal, patient experience journal. It's now 10 years old, an evidence-based academic piece. And I've written an editorial every issue of that journal since April of 2014 when it first came out. And I started just going back and looking at them in honoring our 10th anniversary issue that was coming out in the last year. And I said, there's an interesting arc here of what I wrote in 2014 in April to what I'm going to write in 2024 in April. And there's a story there. There's an opportunity for us to actually use that as a guide, as a chance to look at how we've traversed the last decade, both through the highs and lows, through how we've adjusted and rethought healthcare as a result of the pandemic. And so the ability to take that reflective journey over 10 years and then have it reflect on then where we go from here was really what drove that book. So looking back to moving forward was what sort of motivated me there, and how we convey that in a way that would be practical and useful for people trying to make improvement themselves.
What has been some of the response so far? It's been, I guess, a few weeks since then. What are people saying about it? What's maybe surprised you about the response they've had so far?
The response has been really supportive. I think people have been excited about that ability to take a look back. I think so often we get stuck in the moment or dealing with the crisis of the moment, especially in healthcare right now, right? We're worrying about workforce issues. We're dealing with financial pressures. We're trying to decide how we best care for our communities and consumers and the issues of equity and disparities that we have to address. And we almost put all that weight on our shoulders. What was really exciting is people have reflected, hey, you gave us a chance to see that we have made incredible progress, that there has been intentionality to our work, there's structure to this thing called the experience movement, and that it has taken a lot of diverse voices to ensure that it happens. And so the ability to paint the arc of a journey, I think, has helped people realize how much we have accomplished, how much they as individuals have done. And also, I think, feel the challenge, right? It's not that we're done. In fact, I always say experience isn't a thing you do. If it is, you can say you're done, or it's something you can choose not to do. Right now, in every healthcare institution, no matter where you stand in the world, someone's having an experience. Whether people plan for it or not, whether it's part of their strategy or not, whether they have a way in which they want to address it or not, it's occurring. And so the intentionality with how we move that forward and the opportunities we have to lead that forward are really important. And I think what I hope I helped frame, and I think people have been reflecting back, is to look at that journey, to look at the intentionality, and to also come up with some hope that there are things that we can still and should still be doing as we learn together over this last decade as well.
I love it. Can you walk us through some of the main points? What are like 2 or 3 of those things that you hope readers are going to take away from it?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And the last chapter of the book really is kind of about 10 key takeaways. I won't go through all of them, but I think it gets to some of the core issues that are impacting healthcare today. The first 3 things I suggest are actually central to our model and work we've done around elevating the conversation on human experience, is that we have to care for those who show up to work in healthcare every day. It is evident right now in a workforce that's burdened, overstressed in ways, overworked, probably isn't even fair to say, but also comes to this work out of passion and commitment. we have to find ways to care for those who show up to work in healthcare every day. That is going to both enable us to sustain our current workforce and grow one for the future. We have to continue to return to our roots around listening to and acting on the voices of patients and families, but I'll specifically use the phrase, what matters to patients and families. It's not simply about surveys or what we think satisfaction score should be. It's around what's really important to people in that moment. By asking them that question, there's a great movement, the What Matters to You movement, inspired by members of our community and great mentors to me, like Maureen Bosignano, who wrote the foreword actually to this book, to say it's important that we ask people not just what's the matter with you, but what matters to you. And so that's the second thing I think is important. And then I do think, and I alluded to this before, we have a huge opportunity to address this opportunity of inequity, the realities of healthcare still being disparate. And that's both in how we deliver on our outcomes and how we share our knowledge. The roots that you asked me earlier on about the Beryl Institute itself was driven out of the hope that we could create a collaborative environment where people didn't see my experience is better than yours and that's how we compete. But rather, wouldn't it be amazing if we created an environment where we all were contributing in a way that helped us provide the best in experience, no matter whether we were competitors or not? And that gets to me to the essence of the inequities that we perpetuate sometimes in healthcare, often not intentionally, maybe less explicitly, but these implicit wirings of the healthcare system. How do we ensure the best and equitable outcomes? How do we address the issues of disparities across national boundaries, across health system structures, across the way that we design healthcare in settings around the world? And I think those are some of the fundamental pieces for me. If we care for who works, if we listen to what matters, if we address the disparities, we start to build the fundamental fibers that can ensure a truly transformative healthcare system for people. And I think back to some of the conversations we had before, when you start to put on a consumer lens to this, those are the things that matter, right? You deliver your promise to the people that show up to work every day. You listen to the people who choose you, and you want to create an environment in which they will choose you. And while we can argue whether patients have choice or not, they still have kind of a choice of where they go. They might not choose to be a patient. We don't choose to have that illness or that challenge health-wise, but we still have some level of say in where we go, in some countries more than others. And we also want to ensure that we all have a fair share and access to care and inequitable outcomes that the other person gets as well. And so I think those are really fundamental principles that were important to me. Suggest a lot more, but I think without those things, all the rest fall flat as well.
Yeah. And a couple of interesting points you just brought up, the part about choice. I'd consider almost like lower hanging fruit conversations or debates that come up so frequently, and people might put a comment on it if there's anything related to it on social media or whatnot. And one of them is about, do patients really have choice? And I think you're right, where there's a useful part of that conversation and there's a part that's not as useful, where we're getting hung up in the terminology, where the fact is still for a lot of healthcare consumers, you can choose between going and not going, like getting the care and not getting the care. You can choose between, like, if you have a high deductible health plan, there's still, up until you hit that deductible, you're living in a cash pay world. You're making choices differently. There are so many different types of patient experiences, I guess, is where I'm going with that. And so the awareness of, there's the useful part of that conversation to me is, how can understanding the choices that somebody is going through help us lead to a better experience for them? That's the core, right? Then there's the thought of, are they really? So should we even call them a consumer? I'm like, that part I have found to be less useful, unless it does help us delineate that certain types of services or certain types of choices are going to be different, because you're starting looking at your health plan website of whether someone's in your network versus a truly cash pay situation, or you're working through Medicaid or Medicare. I feel like different sides of the conversation really do have an impact on how useful it is to talk about them. So I'm just glad you brought those parts up, because, like you said, they're founding principles.
In every market, every part in the world is a little different based on the system. Some people have a lot less choice because they're fully public systems, or they have to go certain places or have to wait. And the reality is that the consumer world is based primarily on reputation and loyalty. I have yet to meet a healthcare executive that in any healthcare system in any place around the world that wants to be known as the third or fourth best place out there, right? They're all competing to be the best. They want to strive to be the best. And I think the realities are that is conveyed more often than not through your billboards or not through advertisements or not even through what just you want to say or tell people about you. It's through the voices of the people that had an experience with you in the first place, right? So the reality is the most direct path to the reputation that you want to provide the market about your own healthcare organization is the voices of the people you serve and the voice of people who show up to work, right? If you're not caring for your workforce, they're going to tell people you stink. If you're not caring for your patients, they're going to let people know. Now, that patient may or may not have all the choice in the world whether they can leave your system or not, but the realities are that we are creating that lens. And I think it's fair to say, even from the 15 years ago that we were talking about starting this, I think patients and family members, care partners have recognized they have a lot more power in the healthcare patient relationship than they believed before. This kind of directive of healthcare has changed, and that balance has changed dynamically. And whether that's something people like or not is a whole different story. But I do believe in general, the consumers in the market, the people on the street are influencing healthcare a lot more than we believed they could even 15 years ago.
I agree. And I love that that's an aspect of choice that is useful to focus on, because that does come into play when you start talking about more about the digital experience aspects of things, when you start talking about the non-clinical parts of a patient journey, which there are a lot. They've always been out there. Those are the parts that we see focused on when we hear about retailers and non-traditional entrants coming into the space and trying to either definitely bringing a different approach to consumer choice, because that's only where they've lived up until the moment they enter healthcare. And then I feel when we see some of them start to retreat a little bit or not succeed in the way we expect, that we just say, see, we just leave it up to, well, healthcare's hard. See, nobody can just come in. That's another aspect of the conversation. I feel like there are parts that are useful to understand, and then there are parts that just tell us either consciously or subconsciously, maybe we don't need to innovate that much and try to reduce friction and improve the experience that much. That's the part I worry about, is that if we see people inside and outside of healthcare trying to come in, they're not succeeding in the way that we feel like, or maybe their shareholders feel that would lead to us just letting our guard down and just feeling, yeah, see, we don't need to innovate that much. And that was another reason why I just thought the book was super important to see. There is all of this innovation happening. There's all this progress happening. So I love just the opportunity to take a step back and truly look at some of that.
And I appreciate that. I think it is this juxtaposition of how we've evolved, and still the core. I think I like to use this paradox set of words, like simply complex or complexly simple. I don't know, but the core definition of experience that we share is the very first thing we ever did in the Institute, is that experience is the sum of all interactions shaped by an organization's culture that influence patient perceptions across the continuum of care. And it gets exactly to what you're saying about, right? It's interactions, whether it's human being to human being or through some interface or technology or whatever that might be. It is based on the kind of organizations we build, so the cultures that we want to create in our healthcare institutions. It happens at all touch points across the continuum of care. And I think it's important we talk about that. We're not just talking about clinical boxes. We're talking about the touch points of well before anybody ever enters an actual care encounter to well after they leave. So that's, like you said, the marketing and communications, it's the digital interfaces, it's the portals, it's the billing and collection that happens afterwards. It's the word of mouth that people hear well before, and it's the stories they tell after. That's that continuum that we're speaking about. And all of that is the range of experience that matters. And at the end of the day, back to this lens from a consumer perspective, it's about the perceptions of patients, care partners, their family members, right? That matter. That's the truth. And I think we've actually come to some acknowledgement of that in healthcare in a way that even, back when, for instance, in the United States, the CAHPS surveys first came out, and people were like, the sample size is too small and we don't ask it enough, and it doesn't really tell us what we need. It's not about the surveys, but it really is about the perceptions of what people say about us, what we create in terms of the experience they have, and then how that is conveyed in the market. That has a huge influence. It's a reiterative process, right? Where people don't want to come to work at places that other people think are bad. It is a positively reinforcing effort when you really commit to a strategic perspective on experience, to your point. And And then it has real lasting outcomes. We just actually did a paper not too long ago that talked about the 4 core value streams of delivering on experience around value to patients and families, from everything from quality outcomes to their engagement, value to the workforce around managing turnover and ensuring you get the highest quality people, value to the community around ensuring access to care and really engaging people in equitable ways. But it's also value to the business, right? It creates loyalty, cost efficiencies, and positive outcomes. And so this is not just a nice conversation we're having. This is actually at the heart of driving a vibrant and sustainable healthcare system everywhere. And back to your first question, that's what drives me every day. Imagine if we could do that. And I think it's getting people to step into that space and saying, okay, this isn't a nice conversation about making people happy or asking them questions in a survey. It's about fundamentally rewiring what we do. And this is the kind of woven into the extent of the book is imagine if we could rewire ourselves that way and achieve all the outcomes we hope to for healthcare and the people we serve. So
love that.
Just a little aspirational there.
Where would we be without aspirations? If we don't have a vision of where we're going, then do we know if we're actually getting there? What else is exciting you about how the patient experience is transformed over the past decade, either from the book or something that's occurred to you outside of what's actually in the book?
Yeah, what I love and what has inspired me is really, I use this word a lot, sort of the tapestry of voices that have engaged, right? This has become something not motivated by policy. I think in the United States, if we use that, there was a lot of energy created when we implemented the CAHPS surveys back in 2007, 2008. So it's hard to believe how long ago that was, right? But what you find is that the world is committed to this, right? This is something that's important to people fundamentally. And I've always said something central to probably every talk I've ever given is that the essence of healthcare is simply this: we're human beings caring for human beings. And that idea at the scale of at this n size of 1 in a way, like because it happens at that point, but at the scale of infinity in essence, or billions, right, around the world, this world of a billion stories is what inspires me, because it's an important thing now that people are working on everywhere. And that's, to me, a pretty powerful statement, because most places in the world aren't being asked to, by some policy, make experience a priority. So I think there's a fundamental shift in the ether or the fibers or the DNA of healthcare in general that we've realized we have to do a better job, and we have to be intentional about it in caring for the people who are seeking our care every day. And we need to care for the people who show up to deliver on that care. And so that, while it's also central to where we started, the global transformation and that integrative conversation that we see is pretty profound. And the aha, I think that people are starting to see that it does have real implications. It's not just a nice to do, but it's a must to do. And that's powerful, because you see a real shift then. And I believe we're just at the beginning of that cusp of change, I think, in some ways.
I think about things like how that actually weaves into our podcast theme for this season. We do like to break it down into seasons here. In our current season, we're focusing on innovations that help consumers live healthier lives, especially how we engage consumers in modern ways. And that naturally lets us look a little bit ahead to a couple of those steps in the future and be like, what direction could we go? I wonder what kinds of innovations that you expect that we'll be talking about at this time, say in a year from now, in the very short term.
And you alluded to some of this in the things you shared before. Healthcare is dispersing. Think about it. Healthcare was a hub and spoke, centralized, big box model. And just our capacity to do even things like podcasts, like the way we're doing it right now, because of bandwidth, because of technology, because of global connectivity, healthcare has dramatically changed. And I think one of the things actually we even speak to in the book is that healthcare is going to have to be moved closer to where people are versus us being the place where they have to come. And so I think the innovators that we've had fits and starts at this, between the most basic ideas around home health or some variations of telehealth to dispersed health centers and more localized community health establishments, even these attempts by Walmart and Amazon, all these things. I think there's a recognition that, first of all, care is going to be substantially more relational, but that relationships are going to have to happen in different ways. And we are going to find ways to bring healthcare home. And that's, to me, I have a hard time fathoming. I know there's really smart, bright people probably working on things that I don't even know, but right, that you could get in a scale or stand in front of one of these mirrors and it assesses you enough that your doctor gets a reading and it triggers something that says you need something. I just think the fundamentals of both our wellness, being in healthcare in that way, will change the way we interact. And It'll change all the pipelines in which I think people got lost sometimes in terms of access or waiting for an appointment or whatever they needed to do, which moves healthcare away from this transactional set of things, or waiting for insurance improvement, or how do I transfer or get a referral or whatever it might be, to that ability of having healthcare there with you and for you. And that also is powerful because it makes it accessible anywhere, right? That becomes a low cost, affordable, accessible health system that if I'm sitting in tribal Central Africa, I can go to my local place and get in my scan and do all these things and maybe get the kind of care I need that would have almost been impossible before because I'd have to be able to get to, say, Nairobi in Kenya and then maybe get an appointment at a specific hospital and do all these things. So I think the nature of how healthcare is going to become omnipresent in not a spooky way, right? But it is what I'm envisioning. Whether that's a year from now, I don't know. But I think we're going to start to see rapid increases in decentralization of healthcare rather than just for the big box and spoke model, for instance.
I love that. Like you said, maybe that's not a year from now, but maybe it is. Maybe it's a little further down the road, but that direction makes sense. We're already making progress down that direction. So yeah, let's see where we go from there. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. I'm wondering how we prioritize a little bit of where to focus maybe in the near term, because I usually ask about if there's one aspect of healthcare that we could make easier, where would we focus? Where would we start? But I think a better question is, where is one of those good starting points for us? Like, where does it make sense for us to focus in the short term so that we can continue to have that type of impact that you have been able to see up until now? Like, where those things are just in the middle of the radar screen for you?
Yeah, it almost comes back to where we started in a way that people always ask us, what's the secret sauce? I don't know that there necessarily is one, but the kind of organizations that we build in healthcare, I come back to all the time. It's the reason that culture is at the heart of that definition that I shared. That mirror was held up pretty profoundly through the pandemic for everyone around the world. That we have to do a better job of caring for ourselves and for the people who show up to work with us each and every day. And I think that inverted the pyramid in some ways, right? I think for as much as that was and continues to be for some a painful period to have lived through, I think it reprioritized our focus on that commitment. When people ask about this, what practice should we put in place or what tactics should we employ? My question is, do you have a decent enough foundation in your organization in terms of creating a vibrant, caring culture for the people who show up there to deliver on any promise you want to make to the people you deliver care to? That has to be a priority, I think. We can't tactically guide our way forward in healthcare. I think, to me, it's that fundamental commitment to building good places. And that enables us to do everything we were just talking about before. That can be centralized healthcare or dispersed. Doesn't make a difference. But the kind of cultures that we build right now are going to, I think, essential to the future success of a vibrant and caring healthcare system.
So a perfect place for us to wrap up here, Jason. It's been a pleasure. It really has. We've had, like I said, we've covered so much. For those who are interested in the book, I didn't mention I would do this to you, but is there a place that they can go? I see it's on Amazon. Is that the best place for people?
Yeah, that's the best place to go. Yeah, just look for Transforming the Future of Healthcare, and they might need to add my last name, which is spelled like the animal wolf. But you'll find it there, and hopefully people will pick it up. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Fantastic. I've had the absolute pleasure of speaking with Jason Wolf from the Beryl Institute. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Truly appreciate it. Honored and humbled by the invitation.